We're standing here at the site of 36 Nailor's Row, where Anthony Francis Hegarty came into the world on the 14th of December 1891. It was a troubled world. The economy in Derry was poor, unemployment was high, but most of all housing was deplorable. Nailor's Row, which isn't here anymore, straddled the walls. One side of the street was houses and the other side was simply the face of the walls. It was poor class housing with maybe 3 or 4 families to each house. The family then later moved down to Donegal Street, which is beside the Brandywell Stadium today, but it wouldn't have been much better housing for the family. Anton would have grown up here in Donegal Street, which has now been removed and replaced by Donegal Place. The Brandywell Stadium is close by. It's also the location between Anton and a trotting pony. The match was set up that Anton had to run 16 laps while the trotting pony ran 20 laps. Unfortunately, he fell short by about 200 yards, but that didn't stop the 10,000 crowd giving him an almighty reception and recognising him as possibly the greatest runner ever to come out of Derry. When Anton was 14, he left school, but he found very little opportunities for full-time employment in Derry. So he made the momentous decision at 19 to join the Enniskillen Fusiliers 1st Battalion. He would have come here to Ebrington to sign up and have gone on then to St Lucia's Barracks in Omagh, where he would have done 10 to 12 weeks training. At the end of that, the battalion was sent to India, and it was in India that Anton found that he was a good cross-country runner, winning army championships out there. When his service came to an end in India, the regiment came back to the Midlands of England, where it's presumed he met his future wife, but they had very little time to spend together because the battalion was then sent to Gallipoli in the ill-fated assault on the Turkish peninsula. When the British withdrawal happened, they immediately went on then to the war in France, and Anton would have been at the Somme for the opening day of conflict. Although some days later he would have been diagnosed with what was called neurasthenia in that day. We would know that today as PTSD or shell shock. He was sent home to recuperate, but even then, after recuperating, he was sent back to France once again and saw out World War I in active duty. He was demobbed in March 1919 and came home to Derry to resume his athletics career. Republican prisoners were brought here, and that seemed to spark sectarian tensions that escalated to an all-out war. Jim McGlinchey, whose father Joseph was head of the local IRA, was taken down a Union Jack flag from a lamppost down here, and he was shot dead by a sniper from the fountain. Hostilities got so bad that the president of St Columb's College, further down the road here behind me, called in the IRA to protect them. And there was an outright gun battle for 3 days, and it was only when the Dorset Regiment came in that the hostilities ceased. At this time now, Anton was staying with his sister in Howard Street, and there's no way that he couldn't have been involved. The situation was that on the IRA side, there were men from the Enniskillen Fusiliers who had fought in the war, alongside with the very same men from the fountain who were shooting at them. So you had the ridiculous situation here of former comrades in arms and open hostility towards each other. This seemed to have been a trigger for Anton to think that he had come out of one war back to another war here in Derry, and he really had enough of war by this stage, and he immediately packed his bags and took off for rugby in England. Anton left the troubles in Derry behind him in June 1920 and went back to rugby. By coincidence, the following month, the British Olympic cross-country trials were in Rugby. He entered and surprised everyone by taking a top 6 place to seal his selection for the race itself was toward the end of the programme in Antwerp, and again Anton rose well above expectations by finishing 5th behind the legendary Finn Paavo Nurmi. That made him 2nd in the British team, which finished 2nd, and he was pleased to pick up a silver medal. To date, he is the only athlete from Derry in the Olympics. We're coming to a close of our film about Anton Hegarty. We've visited a number of places in the city, and we've tried also to tell you the story of his life from his childhood right through his military career, through war in Gallipoli and France, up until he came back again. And despite all that, he went to Antwerp and won a silver medal in the Olympics. Paavo Nurmi, who won the cross-country in Antwerp, is still regarded as a national hero in Finland. It's sad to think that Anton is forgotten, and even in his own city. To be forgotten is to die twice. Let us hope, with the help of the gas yard Féile and this film, that Anton has only died once.